Hey everyone, it's Coach Christine and welcome to this week's edition of Christine's Kitchen. So I asked and you guys answered, desserts it is. So today we are having a cookie extravaganza. Now there's a lot of reasons that we're doing cookies. One, they're delicious. Two, they're fantastic to make with the family. Three, you could have a ton of varieties. And four, it's easy to portion size out. So I'm going to give you a few simple swaps and tips along the way. Most of what I'm doing is going to be a plant-based ingredient, but they're going to be delicious. So if you are homeschooling like everybody is right now, rest assured you can use lots of techniques to work in the kitchen. So if you want to talk about chemistry to your older kids, you could talk about the chemical properties of what happens when you combine the ingredients and bake them together. The answer, by the way, is it creates amazingly delicious cookies. But you can also do counting. So how many tablespoons do you put in? Count them out with your kids. If you want to do fractions, well, I have a quarter cup and this is a fourth of a cup. How many, what is the fraction versus of a quarter versus a whole? You can even do basic algebra if you want. If you want to say I have X ingredient and I need to have this many more, X must represent this. So play around with it, have fun in the kitchen with the family, and definitely give it a shot. And above all, it's home ec. Who doesn't like a home ec class? So here we go. We've got cookies extravaganza, as I promised. I am going to be making a multitude of cookies. This is going to be an oatmeal cookie base, but we are going to divide the dough. So what we're doing today is making a double batch of oatmeal cookies. We're going to divide the dough out into thirds, and this way you don't have to make cookie batch over cookie batch over cookie batch. You take the same base of the batch, and then part of the batter, we're going to add white chocolate chips and cranberries that are dried. One part of the batch, we're going to add raisins, and one part of the batch, we're going to add peanut butter and chocolate chips. So that's 3 different cookie types. I am so excited because I love cookies. So get your appetites ready and let's get baking. Let's get started with the recipe. So I have my recipe printed. If you have a family cookbook, this is a great place to keep them. I would open this and share it, but everything in here is top secret. I can't. So I've taken my recipe out. We will start with dry ingredients. Like I said, we're going to be doing the base of an oatmeal cookie first, and we're doing a double batch. So I will put all the ingredients on the screen as you go, and know this is for a double batch. If you only want one, cut this recipe in half. So to start, we are adding 2 cups of oatmeal into here. Go ahead and toss that into your bowl. We're doing all of the dry ingredients first. Then we are adding 6 tablespoons of flour. You can do this with gluten-free flour if you have any kind of gluten intolerance. The recipe calls for, I just use a great baking flour. So you figure out what works in your kitchen. And then it's 4 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. So we're going to toss this in. These are all plant-based, natural, delicious ingredients. And then we're going to have our seasoning mix. So in here, if you want to come and take a peek, it's just a little mixture. This is going to be a combination of cinnamon, nutmeg, ground cloves, and salt. So we're just going to toss all of this in and turn the mixer on to low just to start to mix all of this up. While that is going, we have all of the wet ingredients. So for the wet ingredients, you're going to be looking at 4 tablespoons of melted coconut oil. We're going to be using a half of a cup of butter, 6 tablespoons of maple syrup, and with the maple syrup is also going to be 6 tablespoons of coconut sugar and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. We're going to be mixing all of the wet ingredients into this. So first things first, I'm just going to take my coconut oil and gently pour it in. And now I'm going to take this delicious combination of maple syrup and coconut sugar. It's going to stick into the bowl a little bit with the sugar, so just take a rubber spatula and make sure that you get everything out of here because you really don't want to skimp on flavors. Now, I know that typically I eat plant-based and typically I try to endorse healthy things. And just because I'm using plant-based ingredients doesn't mean the cookies are healthy. But I do have tricks to make it modified, at least so you don't eat so many of them at once. After that, we're going to add our butter in. So just open it up toss it in. Pretty straightforward on this. And we're gonna let all of that just blend together. Does a little zhuzhing in there. Then we're gonna take the wooden spatula and add the other ingredients. Stay tuned. As you can see, I've taken the batter and done it into 3 bowls. Now my plant-based recipe does not make a huge portion. So that is one bonus of doing it as plant-based. And I don't have so many cookies to go through. But we've got it divided into 3, and now it's time to juice them up. So in bowl 1, I'm gonna make these oatmeal raisins. So I have about 1/4 cup of raisins. We're just gonna pour in and then mix it with a spoon. I dropped that one on the floor, so I'm glad I had a second one nearby. Although what happens in the kitchen does stay in the kitchen.
Yes, it does.
Don't worry, I'm really not gonna use that spoon. I'll get another one out. So we've got the oatmeal raisin mixed and ready to go. Now this batch, I've taken dried cranberries and white chocolate chips. It's 1/2 cup combined. You can use your own proportion. I just thought this sounded good, so we're having fun with it. Go ahead and mix this in. Don't be shy, you can zoom in, look at this happiness mixing up. Now, if you want to make this a little healthier, you could of course just do it with maybe raisins and cranberries, or even add some nuts, and it'll be more like a trail mix cookie. And that's a great healthy snack when you're outdoor and hiking, especially since all of our trails are going to be open next week again. So this is a great cookie option, and like I said, it's white chocolate chip, delicious. So this one mixed and ready to go. Now for this batch, I want to add in peanut butter and chocolate chips to do an oatmeal peanut butter chocolate cookie of happiness. Now peanut butter typically is going to add a pretty decent amount of oil in, and because of that, I'm going to add in an additional cup of oats just to help absorb it and make this bake a little bit easier. So peanut butter, we have 1/3 cup, and then chocolate chips to taste. You can never go with too few chocolate chips.
Who doesn't like chocolate chips?
Who doesn't like chocolate chips? That's all I'm saying. So I'm just gonna measure quickly out an additional cup of oats just to blend in and make sure that these cook. We'll actually just start with 1/2 cup and blend it and see. We just wanna make sure that it mixes and that the dough is gonna be good to rise. Now here's a little tip. Once we put these onto the cookie sheet, I have parchment paper lined sheets because all of my cookie sheets are old and everything sticks to them. It doesn't matter how much I grease them, I need new ones. The trick is if you just put down the parchment paper, you could put the cookie dough directly onto it, and then every batch that you put into the oven, you just get rid of that parchment paper and start over. It takes far less time when you're cooking this way. And actually 1/2 cup of oatmeal looks just fine for this, so we'll just keep that extra 1/2 cup instead of a full.
Plus the cameraman doesn't have to wash the dishes as much.
That's true, it's always an added bonus. And if you just as you clean as you bake, it makes the cleanup a lot easier. So it's time to get these onto the sheets. And then what I was trying to say before is that if you put these into the refrigerator for about 10 to 20 minutes to let them chill and firm up a little bit, when you're looking at plant-based butters specifically, the melting point on them tends to be a little bit faster. So when you put them into the oven, you'll find that the cookies can go flat. But if you put them in the freezer or the fridge to let that dough set for 20 minutes or so beforehand, when you put it in the oven, it allows the cookies to be light and fluffy and full. So that's your tip of the day. Let's get these onto the cookie sheet and into the oven. Now I did say we were having a cookie extravaganza, and just showing you how to make oatmeal cookies with a little bit of variation would only be like a party, not an extravaganza. So let's do this. We are going for round 2 for the base. What we're gonna do is a white chocolate macadamia nut cookie, as well as peanut butter and chocolate chips for the cookie. The base of this is going to be the same, so we'll double the batch, divide the batter, and then add all the leaven for the respective types of cookies. Now I will tell you, this recipe is very, very important that this does sit in the refrigerator or the freezer to get that cookie dough to a solid form before you go into the oven. Because you're looking at all plant-based, when it goes into the oven in a solid form, it allows it to maintain its shape and texture and flavor. Otherwise, they're just gonna melt everywhere and it's just a pile of gross blah. Nobody wants that on a cookie. Let's do this. So first things first, you're gonna take a 1/4 cup of coconut oil. This is going to be at room temperature. Toss this into the mixer. And we are going to combine this with our brown sugar. Now we have 1.5 cups of brown sugar. Like I said before, cookies can be healthy, and we had some healthy ingredients in the others. Frankly, if you want to call the oatmeal cookies breakfast, it does have oatmeal, and that's a grain and oats, and there's some cranberries in there, so that gives you kind of a fruit. It's breakfast. But this has 1.5 cups of brown sugar. Not so healthy. I did say it needed to freeze, so here's where your health tip comes in. If you keep all of the cookie dough in the freezer and you only pull out 1 or 2 cookies at a time as you want to eat them, you can bake it in portion sizes. Let's say that you're homeschooling and you want a fresh baked afternoon snack, so you pull out 4 cookies from the freezer, bake them fresh. Each person has cookies and milk after their homework is done, and it's a win-win for the family. I will say, if you eat cookie dough raw, it's going to be dangerous no matter how you slice it. But portion size tip is to keep it in the freezer and only bake as you go. So we've got our coconut oil and brown sugar. We're going to mix this. You want it to go for about 30 seconds. Then we add in the rest of the wet ingredients. That is going to be 8 tablespoons of butter, 4 tablespoons of almond milk. So we'll let this get going. It's just going to cream together for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pour our almond milk in. And then I'm going to dump my butter in. And we'll just let all of that cream together. After this mixes, make sure you have a spatula nearby. There it is. That way you can also just press down along the edges, make sure all of the butter gets to the bottom of your mixer here. It's easy for things to just kind of get caught on the side. Now we add in our dry ingredients. So you have for flour 2 2/3 cup. I'm going to turn this off just so that we can add this in. We'll do this a little bit at a time. And just sort of sift it down in as it's blending. That way the blender doesn't get so overwhelmed either. And by blender, I mean mixer, hand blender, whatever you want to call it. It's what stirs the dough. In addition to this, you need to make sure that you have your salt, your baking soda, and your baking powder. So for baking powder, it's a 1 teaspoon and then a 1/2 teaspoon each of baking soda and sea salt. So just sprinkle that in here.
Yummy cookie!
And the cameraman is absolutely Cookie Monster. True story. I once actually froze cookies and hid them in the base of the freezer, thinking it's under the vegetables. He's not going to dig for them. He's not even going to look there. And I came home like 3 weeks later going, all right, I want to get a cookie out. And I opened it up. I lifted the vegetables. They were gone. The man is like a bear. He could sniff out sweets in the house, which is why I cook in portion sizes now. So let's go ahead and get this separated into our bowls, and I'll show you what the next step is. The next phase is really easy. I have my batter divided. For the white chocolate macadamia nut, take your container of white chocolate, take about 1/3 cup of macadamia nuts, and stir it in. Just fold the nuts into the dough here. Then, oh, so yummy. This is the cookie dough that I have to be careful not to take down in one shot. It's gonna be ooey and gooey and warm and delicious and crunchy, and really, who doesn't like a white chocolate macadamia nut cookie? Something's wrong with you if you don't like them. No offense. Then the other cookie, I have about 1/4 cup each of peanut butter chips and chocolate chips. Feel free to add more if you want. There's no harm in it. Same thing, just fold the chips in. We're gonna roll these into little cookie balls and put on the cookie sheet in just a little bit. Just so that all of the ingredients can come together, I'm gonna place this into the fridge and let the batter cool down and just solidify a little bit. And then we will get them onto parchment paper so they can set in the freezer for about a half hour. So we have the cookie dough here. Basically, you're just gonna take a handful, roll it into a little ball, and we're putting it into a Ziploc bag. That way this can sit and firm up in the freezer. Now, all you wanna do is just grab some, pat it so that that dough stays nice and solid together, and put it in the bag. This is also great because you can choose to cook just 1 or 2 of them, or you can have the entire pile of cookies in one shot. Your choice. You can pick your healthy. Now, for those of you who know me, I am Coach Christine and I'm a trainer, and cookies can take a little while when you're having a cookie extravaganza, especially when you're making 5 different kinds of cookies. And so it turns out I have a training session that's going to start in about 10 minutes, so I must transform out of my apron extravaganza of baking here and put on workout clothes and go lead a personal training session. Then we will be back after dinner to take these out of the freezer, put them in the oven, and have the perfect dessert. So stick with me, I gotta get my workout in, and then we'll be back to enjoy and indulge. See you soon. So there I was last night. I finished my training session, I came upstairs, I made dinner, I poured myself a glass of wine and relaxed and realized I still have cookies to make. No, not so much. So here's what happened. I actually took all of my cookies and I put them into these bags. As promised, I said I was going to be putting them into the freezer to set. Now this was brilliant because they're ready to go into the oven. And because I didn't want to make all of the cookies last night, I baked just 2. That's right, I portion sized it for myself, and they were delicious. So I'm very excited to share these. I have my bags of dough here. We're just going to place them onto the parchment paper, put them in the oven at 375. They bake for about 8 to 10 minutes. Now here's a trick that you want to think about. When they're going into the oven, give them about 2 minutes less than what you think they should have, because they will continue to cook onto the cooling rack. And if you pull them out when they look, oh gosh, they're brown and they're perfect and they look done, they're gonna get extra crispy. So if you want a crispy cookie, cook them for the full time. Otherwise, check them about 2 minutes early. If they look like they're getting brown but still very gooey in the center, they will continue to cook the rest of the way on your cooling rack and they will be delicious. See you in a few. Cookies are out of the oven and we have lots and lots of cookies, as you can see. What am I going to do with all these cookies other than want to eat them? I am going to share them. So one of the reasons that I love baking is it brings a smile to everybody's face. And small acts of kindness go a long way. So to say thank you to all of our essential workers, our frontline workers, I am going to individually baggie all of these up and make a round of donations. And we have everything ready to go. Yes, I have gloves on and individual baggies, but that is for a reason. I don't want to continue to touch every single thing because I want to make sure that we are donating these. Stick with me, I'll tell you more about that in just a few minutes. Each cookie is going to go into an individual bag. Today we have everything baked. So with our cookie extravaganza, we've got white chocolate macadamia nut. We have a chocolate chip cookie with peanut butter chips in it also. We have already bagged up here are going to be our oatmeal white chocolate craisin. There's an oatmeal raisin, and then there is an oatmeal peanut butter chocolate chip. So lots and lots of cookies and variety. And the last thing on deck is this beautiful tray of peanut butter chocolate. They're called peanut butter squares. It's kind of like it's just a piece of heaven in your mouth. That's the only way to explain it. And I did not share how I baked this one, but I do want to make sure that I'm sharing these with the community today. This recipe, believe it or not, I learned from my mother-in-law, and it has been top secret in our family. And when I say top secret, I mean she said while I was engaged to my husband, you cannot have that recipe until you say I do. I thought, this is silly. It's a cookie recipe. And she's like, it is not just a cookie recipe. It is the peanut butter squares. Lo and behold, the day after our wedding, she walks up and hands me that recipe. So 15 years later, you can bet I'm not sharing it. but I will share the cookies with everybody around. So what we are doing with all of these is we are going to pay this random act of kindness forward and donate these cookies to all of our frontline workers. So I know that hospitals don't allow fresh baked cookies, which is heartbreaking because I really, really wanted to be able to say thank you to all of the nurses and the doctors who are putting their lives on the line every day just to go to work so that we can be healthier together. So with that in mind, we're going to take these down to the fire department, to our first responders, and I'm hoping to also donate some to the airport. You don't think about airline being essential workers. Even though there's not a lot of people traveling right now, they are still going to work. They have to be in the middle of the community. They have to interact with others. But you know what they are doing? They're the ones loading the planes to ship all of the medical supplies all over the country to the places that are needing it most. They are flying doctors and nurses in and out of every location so that they can get to the cities that need help most urgently. And for that, we thank you so much. For your food bank workers who are feeding the needy and making sure that people who are less fortunate are still able to have a meal in front of them. Thank you. To everybody in the community who just being socially distanced, make sure to put a smile on your faces and waving when you're walking by. It makes a world of difference, and it makes our community just a little bit more pleasant to be in under these circumstances. So we appreciate everything that everybody is doing. I ask for everybody to just find a random act of kindness in your heart and pay it forward to somebody else in your neighborhood and see if we can start a new movement.